Hey everybody, the audio apocalypse is nearly upon us. It should be in about 24 hours time. Assuming I can upload this tonight, as I'm planning on doing it. Also, first things first, apologise for the blindingly white background. I'm on Hearthstone top decks right now just to show the preview of all the cards. They've all been shown now for the Miniset, and I wanted to give a little rating for them. I did intend as well to do some like a little bit of editing or something. I was going to go, oh, they come out yesterday, I'll do some editing today, and then like I'll send it out in the evening, and it'll be great. I was really ill yesterday, so I didn't have a chance to actually check out the last cards, which I've now looked at. Nor to record something so tough. You're going to get zero editing. I'm going to hold a finger up for my star ratings, okay, for each card. So yeah, apologise for the eye bleach and apologise for the a little bit of lack of quality. I can't lie either. I hate editing. Probably not the greatest idea to, record, but hey-ho. I always seem to do these on mini sets and not big sets. I think because if I went to a big set, I'd just waffle for the entire time. But maybe in the future, if I can get my act together and my health together a little bit more, we'll try and do something a little bit more quality. Let's put it that way. Anyway, a lot of people have been shitting on the mini set already. I think after 30 seconds, I'm allowed to say shitting on before YouTube shouts at me. But yeah, people have been saying this mini set is kind of garbo and some of the cards are not that impactful. Honestly, I don't think that is entirely true. There are certainly some cards in the expansion or the mini set which are a little bit lacking in my opinion, and unfortunately a lot of them are legendaries in my opinion. But there's some solid cards in here which will beef up some decks, including some decks that are currently not on the toppiest of the pile. Anyway, for reasons unknown to anyone, including myself, we're going to start with the Demon Hunter list first. So, immediately, the first card, Remixed Rhapsody, does 3 damage to all minions and then gains an additional effect. In your hand, it changes each turn. Those effects being, scroll down, ignore the advert, there's the Angsty Rhapsody, so it draws 3 cards. The Emotional Rhapsody, which gives you 5 attack. The Resounding Rhapsody, that does 3 damage to all minions twice. Or the Wailing Rhapsody, that does 3 damage to all minions, and you summon a 5/5 demon. Very, very solid cards, right? Right at the gates, 1 star. I think this card will see basically no play. There are none of the deck lists out there that I think are going, oh yeah, we really wanted this Remixed Rhapsody. It's really for like a controlled Demon Hunter deck. They keep trying to push these cards. There's not really a controlled Demon Hunter archetype out there right now. The closest I would say is Big Demon Hunter, but that's kind of more of a combo-ish deck, where you're just trying to get your pieces of the puzzle together to do your Inquisitor, like 16 damage to the face, right? I don't think this will fit into that deck. The other thing I've got as a problem for this being, the 5 mana do 3 to all plus random effect, is that Demon Hunter has this AoE clear that they use a combo with Silvermoon Arcanist, even if I can pronounce Silvermoon correctly, plus Unleashed Fel, which also gives you 3 damage to all minions, plus heals you. And I think the combo is also, I always forget how much Unleashed Fel is. Unleashed Fel is a 3 mana card, right? Silvermoon is 2? It's around 5 mana anyway. It is a 2-card combo, and you typically want things bundled together. But I feel like that is what you want. You want the lifesteal survivability to get into the later game where you can play your really powerful cards. So I just don't think there is a world where you play this card. And also, 4 random effects. Not all effects are made equal, and sometimes you'll be just, you'll be banging the wall. It's like, why did you not give me what I wanted? I wanted a 5/5 demon, and you keep giving me 6 to all. That is what it is. So I think because it's going to be, I think firstly Demon Hunter don't want it, and secondly I think it's going to be frustrating to use. I don't think it will see any play. This is a theme of the mini set, by the way, has extra effect while in hand. So if that's not your cup of tea, then maybe this mini set is not going to be for you. Then to move along, we have the Rhythm Dancer Risa. Legendary 5 mana 3/5 rush. After your hero attacks, return this to your hand and set its cost to 0. You may have noticed as well, it's dual class. Dual class cards are back. That's the other theme of the mini set. And the themes of the dual classes are not the same as the previous expansion that ran this. I'm really happy dual classes came back, by the way. I really like the cards. Even just from the colour scheme. I like the colour scheme. So yeah, this is both Demon Hunter and Rogue, so it's going to be a bit bouncing all over the place, this this review, because some classes are shown more than once for a card. Anyway, just enough blabbering. After you attack with your hero, it reduces your hand, sets its cost to 1. So that's the theme of Rogue, right? Bouncing cards back to your hand, reducing their card to 1. 1 star. I don't get this card. So, roughly, assuming you use both plays of the card on the same turn, it's 6 mana, because you have to pay 1 to play it again. You do 6 damage, assuming you don't die on the first attack, and you'll survive with a 3x body. And this requires you also to be preloaded with a weapon, because your hero has to attack. Now, for Demon Hunter, you can just do that by pushing the hero power button. You can do that with Rogue as well, but again, not all hero powers are made equally. One is 1 cost, the other one is 2 cost. One can survive through another turn, I do admit, but you don't want to be setting up for the Risa play, and I don't think the combo is good enough. I put some notes on this. I think for the above value, i.e. as in me saying that 6 mana do 6, Fireball is 4 mana deals 6. Now, admittedly, this can be split in terms of damage, but you're kind of looking for at least a 3 health body, like a 3 mana 3/3. Sorry. A 3/3 body, which would accompany the other, mana-ish to make this valuable. But I don't think this is cheaty enough. I honestly think this is just too fair for both Rogue and for Demon Hunter. I think this card was with an intention of running it into a combo Rogue deck, where you don't play both, you don't use both plays of the Rhythm Dancer Risa on the same turn. Like, you Rhythm Dancer Risa, bounce it back to your hand, next turn play another Rhythm Dancer Risa, attack again with the Risa, bounce it back to your hand, so you can keep getting this continual 3 damage rush every single turn, and use this card to enable all combos. Do I think Combo Rogue is going to be good enough with Risa? It's going to be better. I think this will see some testing. It's a bit harsh on the 1 side, probably should be really a 2-star, because I think people will try this. But I don't think it's going to be the missing piece of the Combo Rogue puzzle, this Rhythm Dancer Risa. Famous last words, maybe it'll turn out to be a 5-star card, but I don't think it's quite there, right? And it's going to be too expensive to play in a Miracle Rogue deck. The first 5 mana one is just too expensive, and just holding this 1 mana rush deal 3 damage is not really its cup of tea, so unfortunately I don't think this is going to see much play. However, in the future, if they keep, enabling combo builds, giving you better and better combo cards, better cards to enable the combos, then Risa's rating might fluctuate. I think for now, though, I don't think she's going to be good enough. Anyway, next card, Tough Crowd, another dual class Rogue Demon Hunter card. And this is going to be really toxic, this card. I've given it 3 stars, but I will admit, I don't know if you're going to play this card in your deck either. So it's 3 mana bounce a minion to get a 1-cost minion with it. You get the 1 mana 2/1, sorry, the 2/1 stat line, which is typically a 1 mana card. So you can kind of say this is like a 2 mana bounce a minion. Now, Rogue might want to bounce its own minions. You might see this as a combo piece for Rogue. But I think outcasting the minion is going to be too difficult for Rogue to consistently achieve, especially if you're trying to run it into the combo deck. And it's too expensive for the Miracle deck. So I don't think Tough Crowd will see any play in Rogue. Where I think it will see some play, and I don't know if this will make the base deck. I actually suspect it won't. So you know what? Maybe I'll give this a 2-star, not a 3-star, because it will be tested, but I don't think it will make the actual deck list. Is Outcast Demon Hunter. So Outcast Demon Hunter can generate Outcast cards, which will generate, on the right side of your hand, so you can get the Outcast effect off. Basically, guaranteed. There are then some cards that can, generate the Outcast card. So you have Illidari Studies, correct? And Fellerin, I think, reduces the card cost by 2. And Illidari reduces by 1. And I think playing this at 1 cost or at 2 cost and outcasting it, you could really get around a tough minion. There's going to be times where you generate this card, especially from Illidari Studies, and you're like, oh my god, I want to hit them in the face, right? I'm playing Demon Hunter faces the place, and they've got this big taunt in the way. Nope, I'm just going to bounce it back to your hand. You have to remember as well, why is bounce good? Well, if you're running into, Warlock, who have got some really good taunt death rattle minions, send that back to the hand, make them play it again. And especially if you're sending something back to the hand that is 9 cost, they have to spend that mana again. So you can do some really toxic things with certain decks. Against others, it's going to be kind of mediocre, which is why I think it probably won't make the actual deck list, but you'll see a decent amount of play of this in Ranked through Discovery. You can say, tough crowd, tough start for my ratings as well. I've kind of been harsh to all of them, and it's not gonna change. Through Fel and Flames, 0 mana, Fel spell, give a minion rush, finale, and +1/+1. 2 stars. And I was kind of damned to give this 2 stars. On paper, this card seems pretty weak, 0 mana, give something 1/1. Okay, 0 mana, give something rush. Okay, it's okay, but it's not like game changing. The reason why I'm kind of like damned to play this, say this is a 1-star card, is often a 0 mana spell becomes broken in some way. And I'm certain that, for example, Demon Hunter can abuse a 0 mana spell. So I think it will see some testing, but maybe not become a tier 1 deck at least. So the things I've mentioned in my notes, possibly it'll see playing a hyper-aggressive Menagerie Warrior. You might see it in another hyper-aggressive Demon Hunter deck with Magnifying Glaive, where you can throw out these 0-cost cards, get the buff, and then Warrior's pretty good at drawing cards, especially Menagerie Warrior. And Death Knight is also very good at drawing cards, so it could just be seen as a card you throw out there for a little bit of extra stats, and, everything's fine and dandy because you're just going to redraw that card again. Also, a 0 mana finale will be easy to pull off for an aggro deck in the early game rather than waiting to, 8, 9, or 10 where you might have to play multiple combinations of cards to get to that finale state. Because you have to spend all your mana to get a 0 mana finale off, right? There's not a lot of wiggle room. The other potentially really good synergy I can see it with is Lady S, so Lady Setheno, however you want to pronounce it. It's a 0 mana spell. It's going to cast her effect. Also, if you finale it, you could give a +1/+1, which is pretty spooky when she's, smacking you in the face, potentially. I would have said, therefore, this card would have had a little bit of a higher rating. I might have bumped up to a 3 if it weren't for the fact that Sinful Brand got nerfed recently. So I think the Lady Setheno Sinful Brand deck, where this card would have seen the best play, I just don't think it's going to be good enough anymore to enable it. But never say never, 0 mana spells, they're always a little bit spooky, right? But as I said, 2 stars, I think this will see some testing at least, but might fall through. Then the final one that has got Demon Hunter in its blood. Oh, I should have mentioned that was Warrior Demon Hunter. That's the other dual synergy that Demon Hunter has. So Abyssal Basis, a 7 mana 4/7 demon. Taunt Lifesteal costs 2 less for each weapon you've equipped this game. I've given this one 3 of my finest stars. And I put as a note, maybe this is the missing piece of Menagerie Warrior. Menagerie Warrior is not quite there. One tribe they didn't have access to was a demon. And this is your Demon 4 Warrior. The kind of issue for the Menagerie deck is, the Menagerie deck doesn't normally run a weapon. They do run, however, the pirate. It's called Sword Eater, and that could reduce its cost to a 5 cost. And I think for this to be a valuable enough effect to play, or at least the value you want from this card, I think if you can play one weapon before you play Abyssal Basis, so you can make it a 5 mana 4/7, I think that is acceptable at least. That's a reasonable stat line for the cost. 5 mana 4/7 with both Taunt and Lifesteal, that's pretty good, right? The other thing I need to mention for Menagerie, why I kind of immediately, my mind went to it, I mentioned there's no demons right now available to Warrior. There's no demons in the neutral pool right now, with the exception of 2 cards, and they are amalgams. So you could conceivably have Abyssal Basis, target it with Amalgam of the Deep, and this will pull out Abyssal Basis guaranteed, and you'll have 1-man band, I think, guaranteed. So you could potentially just use this engine to generate lots of 1-man bands and just keep beating down the opponent's face. I don't think you're going to see this in too many Demon Hunter decks. Famously, I could be wrong. There are some Demon Hunter decks, aggressive ones again, that might run multiple copies of weapons, in which case if you play, obviously if you play 2 or 3 weapons and you get this out at 1 mana or 0 mana, then it's disgusting. but I don't think they'll play the weapons fast enough to get the Abyssal Bassist on board at a time that is cheaty enough. Maybe we'll see it. I'm not certain for that. The other deck that I've mentioned, I noted down that this might see some play in. The big warrior deck that's rising right now as I speak is the Enraged Warrior deck. And there is a card support in this mini set that I think will go really well into Enraged Warrior. And this is a pretty good minion to potentially go into the Enraged Warrior. They run a weapon, guaranteed. They run the... Names. Let me just check the name of this. It is the 3 mana. If your minion is injured, buff it. Imbued Axe. They run Imbued Axe, so you can get a guaranteed single cost reduction on this card. So you can take it to that 5 mana stat line that I said you need to get it to, at least. They also run Instrument Text to find that weapon, so you can pretty consistently get a weapon in that deck. It's got enough help that it could survive a hit from like an Enrage, and then you can just keep buffing it up from there. Maybe protect your other Enraged minions with the Taunt. The Lifesteal can give you a bit of health because your deck is probably going to be swinging weapons at other minions for, some sort of board clear. I can definitely see that going into that Enraged Warrior deck. Does it quite make the cut? I'm not sure. It'll see some testing. But for that reason that it might see testing in 2 different warrior decks, I think it'll find a home in Menagerie Warrior. And I think maybe Demon Hunter will test it out at least with their Magnifying Glaive build where they might run an additional weapon. I think it's worth a 3-star. Alright, now we go towards the Druid cards. And obviously they're mixed cards, right? Popular Pixie. 2 mana 2/3, choose one. Either refresh your hero power, or your next one costs 0. It's another card I've given 3 stars to, but kind of watch this space. I think it will see play for certain in hero power Druid. Specifically the Zok Druid. Now, a Nubrican was nerfed recently, so again, it's kind of why it's giving it the 3 rating. Druid's not in a great place right now. But it's a pretty good stat line, 2 mana 2/3, that's very fair. But if you think about it, if you reduce your hero power to 0, your hero power costs 2. So in effect, you can kind of, I know it's not quite fair to say this, but you can kind of treat it as a 0 mana 2/3, which is pretty powerful. And you can definitely treat it like that when you start buffing your hero power, right? That's the big thing for the Druid right now, buffing your button. There's really nice flexibility in this card as well. Refreshing the hero power, later in the game where maybe you got 5 attack, 5 armor on it, to give you that big single target removal might be the correct play. Alternatively, if you're running into a really aggressive deck, Popular Pixie playing it out early, always welcome for Druid to have some early cards to deal with aggression. And then you get to push the button and maybe clear one of these minions off just immediately. That's pretty powerful. The other situation where I think this card is going to be extremely powerful and why you might want to take... you might want either the 0 mana or the refresh hero power. You could make some really big Zok Quill Balls with this thing. So Zok is normally discounted down towards 6 when you play, again, names. The card that reduces cards above 6 mana. What are you called? You are called... Summerflower Child, that's the one. So it normally discounts Zok to a 7, correct? Yes. To a 6 from a 7. If you Pixie and Hero Power, or if you can, you can get another one of these maybe up there so you can Hero Power, Pixie, Hero Power again or something, and you've got the 5/5s preloaded into the Hero Power, you could make huge Quill Balls. And I think you might honestly see that just slot straight into the deck. Again, 3 stars because I don't think the deck is particularly strong right now, and I don't think this will elevate it to new heights. But it's a fun little card, honestly. Doomkin. 2 stars. But again, this could be really toxic, this card. So it's a 6 mana 3/4 battle cry. Take one of your opponent's empty mana crystals. I really like the theme of this. It's also a dual class card between Druid and Warlock. So this is really good for Druid. Druid likes to ramp. Typically that's their kind of their archetype, right? There's the ramp cards and the enablers and the advantage of ramping have been removed out during this cycle. So this is the first nod towards a ramp druid again. There is a big druid deck hanging around there, but it's not super high up on the old tier list right now. Perhaps they'll try and use this card to, ramp and get a body on top of it. My problem right now is I feel like to really get the best use out of Doomkin, you'd kind of want to do it multiple times, just to keep pulling you further and further ahead of the opponent and holding them in place without any tribe stuff. And I think Zola is going to be too slow to copy this. I don't think it's going to be good enough. Also, the 6-mana 3/4 stat line, pretty brutal. It's not cheaty enough when you bear in mind that right now Druid can have an option, and some Druids do run this. In fact, a lot of Druids do run this. Wild Growth, which is gain an empty mana crystal for 3. You're kind of getting the empty mana crystal for 3. You're getting then, on top of that, the 3-mana 3/4, which is nothing special. So you're basically playing 0 to remove one of your opponent's mana crystals. Is that worth it? Possibly in very specific situations, but you'd want it to come up as early as possible. I think turn 6 is too late for it to make a huge difference. The dream, I guess, cloning into Doomkinning again, and just holding your opponent at that mana cost, whilst you effectively ramp 2. That could be nice, but I just don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna make it. And similarly, I don't see a way that it's gonna go into a Warlock deck right now. I wouldn't say there's a big control Warlock deck out there that might want to use this. And the ones that are kind of out there, like the hybrid imp ones with the Abyssal Curses, you could argue, I suppose, that the big undead one is somewhat of a control deck. I don't think either of those will run Doomkin. They have other ways of cheating out stuff. So I'm sorry, I don't think you're going to find much of a home. And the only reason I'm giving you 2 stars is because I said it's kind of toxic and people like to be toxic in this game. So I think it will see some testing before inevitably going to a 1-star card. Blood Treant, a 5-mana 2/2. It costs health instead of mana. 1 star. I don't quite get this right now. Now, I do appreciate you're Druid, you're Warlock. Warlock in the past has had lots of things which say, it's based around your health, going up, going down and stuff, and you get another bonus effect on it. Right now, though, there's not really any great payoffs for this for Warlock. I was looking through it. There are ways to make your hero immune so you don't have to pay the cost, so you can see it as a 0-mana 2/2. But it's really lacking a card right now that is if you take damage, this happens. The quest has, rotated out, so this card might see some play in Wild, so I guess, and I don't play a lot of Wild, so any Wild people out there, be worried the Blood Treant might be coming for you. I think in Standard Constructed, though, this will see basically 0 play. Druid, I kind of understand why the angle they're going at. Paying 5 health as a Druid is not too bad when you're going to gain armor instead, but it's not. I just don't think the juice is worth a squeeze. Take 5 damage, go to 2/2, no tribes. Ooh, it's a tough sell. A really tough sell right now. Again, watch out though, because I imagine this card being shown now, the Blood Treant, I think this is going to give a nod that they're going to start supporting this Warlock strategy of taking damage with your face in some way or via card effects to give you a benefit. So I think this is enabling a future card. Funnel Cake. This is a Druid Priest card. 1 mana, restore 3 health to a minion and its neighbours. For each one overhealed, refresh a mana crystal. I'm going to give this a tentative 2 stars. Notice I'm giving a lot of low ratings right now. Yeah, kind of true. This one is very tentative, though. There is a world where this card becomes very, let's say very strong, but strong at least. It'll become like a 3 or 4-star card. But right now, I think it's going to be at a 2. I like the card. I should mention that. I think the effect is really cool. If you can have 3 minions on the board, you potentially can pay 1 mana. If you overheal all of them, you get 3 mana crystals back. So it effectively becomes 1 mana gain, 2 mana crystals, right? Unfortunately, there is a card in the game right now that does that without a situation, and that is Horn of Winter in Death Knight. They have 0 mana refresh too. So there's very much of a muchness there, where I think this card would see some play is in the Overheal Priest decks. I don't think they've hit a critical mass yet, though, where this card alone isn't going to be enough, and there is actually another one in the pack, spoilers, but I don't think these cards alone are enough to push that archetype into the Tier 1, Tier 2 decks. I should also mention, although Death Knights is 0 mana, refresh 2, you could say this one, and its optimal situation, is 1 mana, get 2 mana crystals, and you heal for 6, because obviously you need the overheal, so 1 health from each of those minions has to be wasted. That's too situational right now. You really need an overheal on the minion you hit as well. Looking in the overheal priest pool, there are some good cards out there, but not enough right now. Therefore, I don't think this will push it further, and therefore it's 2 stars. But watch the space. Overheal is now priest's core mechanic, or at least it's one of them. They're going to keep supporting this, and there is going to come a point where the critical mass will reach supernova or something, or however you want to call it, and this funnel cake card will just explode onto the scene. Finally, for Druid Fanboy, choose one. Give, and it's also Druid Priest, give a friendly minion +2 attack and rush, or 2 health and lifesteal. 2 mana, 2/2. I'm sorry to say this again, it's looking bleak right now. 1 star. I think this card is just filler. I don't even have any more notes on that. I don't think it's cheaty enough. I don't see a world where Priest runs this. I don't see a world where Druid runs it either. It's okay. It's nothing special. Okay. Now we get to Hunter. Oh god. Hidden Meaning, 1 star. 2 mana secret. When your opponent ends their turn with no mana, summon a random 3-cost minion. It's too easy to play around. Right? Hunter plays a secret you now know not to play, down to 0, otherwise to get a 3-cost minion. It's also anti-synergistic with some of the other secrets in Hunter. I didn't even notice this before. But Hunter right now's other secret is play 3 cards in a single turn, right? In motion denied, to do 6 damage to the enemy hero. So why would you have another secret that makes you want to not play cards? They just overlap too much. There are a lot of secrets in Hunter right now. I mean, Cat Trick, Emergency Maneuvers, Explosive Trap, Freezing Trap, Motion Denied, Wandering Monster, Zombies, and now this one. So there's going to be a lot of trying to get through the Hunter secrets, but there's just no payoff. The only other card that mentions secret in Hunter right now is Harmonica's Soloist, which only just came out, which is if you control no other minions, discover and cast a secret. The support is just not there for it right now. It's not going to see any play right now. If Secret Hunter becomes supported, then maybe this card sees some play. But honestly, if it becomes supported, I don't think this makes the cut of the top 4 or 5 secrets in Hunter. Actually, how many secrets did I just say there were? There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 secrets in Hunter. You know what? I'm just going to do this now. Do I think it's better than Cat Trick? No. Do I think it's better than Emergency Maneuvers? Probably not, no. Do I think it's better than Explosive Trap? Probably not, no. Freezing? No, absolutely not. Motion Denied? I think it depends on the deck you're running in at this point. You found one where it might be in the same tier. Typically, Hunter wants to go face pretty quick, because a Motion Denied is probably better than it. Wandering Monster, when someone attacks your hero, summon a 3-cost, I think that's better. And Zombies, I think that's better. So I think this is the worst Hunter secret. And situationally might not be the worst one, but the 6th best one out of 7. Well done. However, the 1-star train is over. Yelling Yodeler, Battle Cry. Trigger friendly minions Death Rattle twice. This has the dual class of Hunter and Death Knight. 5 stars. This will see a new deck born. We're going to see a lot of... And by the way, it's not Death Rattle Hunter, sadly. Although there has been, in the past, Death Rattle Hunters out there that, use lots of eggs. You kill your eggs. Get lots of little minions. I don't think the support is quite there for Hunter right now. They have Asher and Saber, which I don't think is a great enough thing to trigger with Yodeler. They have Nephanos, though. If a good Death Rattle does come about, I could see it again. I think it's like the Outcast. The Overheal Priest. He's not quite hit a critical mass of Death Rattle Hunter cards. If you do see that, this card will be played in that Hunter archetype. It will just slot straight into the deck. What really scares me about this card, though, is the Death Knight side of things, because it has no runes on it, so it can go into all of the decks that they want to. But you may have remembered there was a card added with double Unholy Rune called Cagehead, which has a death rattle of when it's triggered, it spits out a 9/9 with charge and taunt. That is frightening. If that effect goes off twice, that is 18 damage to the face. There will be ways of exploiting this even further. It's a huge amount of burst damage. There's a potential combo with Bone Lord Frost Whisperer. If you can get Bone Lord Frost Whisperer to die, you can play Cagehead, which then gives you the mana to play 2 Yelling Yodelers. That's 36/36 in charge and taunt. And the Cagehead is still alive on the board, so it's also very slightly sticky. That's your ass, right? Unless you're playing Blood Death Knight, you're not surviving that turn. Even with Rinnerfall, you're not surviving this turn. I don't even think that is going to be the best form of it. Bearing in mind as well, you can spread this Death Rattle around with cards like... sorry, I need to just check this for a second. Called Death Growl, right? That's a 1-mana choose a minion, spread its Death Rattles with adjacent minions. So you could even go as far to say that you put Cagehead on multiple different minions. Those minions, you might not want to proc them. Well, too bad. If you don't proc them, the Yelling Yodel is going to come and proc them for you. It makes everything super scary that has this Cagehead Death Rattle on it. As I said, I don't think it's going to be a combo-focused deck. It's going to be an aggressive deck that it's going to be popping eggs with them as well. I truly think there's going to be a frightening Death Knight deck. I don't know exactly how it's going to mesh together yet. I think it's going to be the stronger variant will be triple Unholy Rune, but we'll go to a card in a moment, in fact the next card, which is would lead to double Unholy 1 Frost. And I think both those decks could be really strong. It might start 2 different archetypes. I have seen even during this expansion some Death Rattle Death Knight out there, but I just think it was, and that typically was triple Unholy. I just don't think that was quite as good as just the normal Unholy Death Knight. The other thing I didn't mention about this, there are certainly some memes that could be about with the Yodeler. You could also proc this on stuff like Selfish Shellfish to make your opponent just keep drawing cards. I don't know if this is going to be better than Due Process Druid, but with the other cards coming forward where Death Knight could trigger, Death Rattles often, I can definitely see a world where there could be some sort of mill Death Knight, mill Hunter out there. It could be super scary, and this Yelling Yodel will be the cornerstone of all of those decks. 5 stars. Right, let me just scroll up a second, because I wanted to do this card with this one. It's actually the first one on the list. Death Knight card specific, Dead Air. Destroy your undead. Resummon them. 1 Frost, 1 Unholy, 2 cost. Clearly this is meant to go with the Death Rattle Unholy archetype, so this is why I want to do it with Yelling Yodeler. Now, it does seem, and by the way, I'm giving this 3 stars, it seems potentially problematic. 1 green, 1 blue. No, none of the big Death Knight decks want to do that, right? They all run triple Unholy or triple Blood or triple Frost. Then they've tried to support rainbow decks, but you don't really want to run this into a rainbow deck either because Cagehead is too Unholy. Where I think this card could see some play, and I alluded to this before, 2 Unholy, 1 Frost would allow you to run Cagehead plus this card, which could be another way to trigger the Cagehead to do even more burst damage. More? Yes, I want more damage, just in case you don't draw your Yelling Yodelers. Could also pop your eggs. It could do a lot of things. Now, you might ask, what is the benefit of having 1 blue? A big one is Acolyte of Death, which gains draw if every time an undead dies, is a single Frost rune right now. So that would slot straight into that deck. And maybe that's all you need. Maybe that you just need those 2 single Frost runes, and it's good enough. You could also throw in Thessarian. He's another Death Rattle if you really wanted to try it, who has Reborn as well. I think you would probably consider throwing him into that deck. Maybe Bonebreaker as well, the weapon, just to chip your opponent down so that you don't need the 36 combo rush damage. You might be able to get away with, I don't know, 18 instead, right? However, I think the problem with this deck and why I've only rated this 3 stars and not 5 stars, I think the triple Unholy deck with Marugar as another finisher will be stronger than this. It's the big downside to this. You can't put Marugar in it. Marugar is such a frightening card to get that I think triple Unholy will use this better. And I also forgot about the even best thing about Yelling Yoda for Death Knight. It's giving you corpses, right? I'm pretty certain it gives you corpses. Actually, I'm not sure about that. Quote me, quote unquote, I'm not sure. Dead Air certainly does. So you can generate a ton of corpses. That is going to be frightful. Admittedly, you can't play that with Marugar, but whatever. I guess it's something to search out for, though, if you're running Triple Unholy. Can you generate the mixed runes? I'm not sure. If you can discover it, that could be a pretty scary discovery for that deck. Anyway, because I think the Triple Unholy variant is going to be stronger, I've only given this 3 stars. But I think it will be a deck archetype that is tried and tested. Next, we have the Hallowed Hound. It has no rune typing again. It's a Hunter Death Knight card. It's a 6 mana, 3/6 lifesteal rush. Also damages the minions next to whomever this attacks. I forgot the card. Was it called Cave Hydra? Very reminiscent of that, which was a lower cost but did lower damage and didn't have lifesteal on it either. Actually, I can't remember if it had rush on it, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, and this might be an indication of how the game has grown or about it, how bad I am at rating cards, 1 star. I don't think this will see any play. It's kind of good. It's fast damage. It could be a huge health gain, which hunters struggle with. It might see some play in Big Beast Hunter, but I don't think it's going to be good enough to make that list, sadly. And I was just trying to think where to put this in Death Knight. Maybe put it into Blood Death Knight. Maybe throw it into Unholy so that you can clear the board with a buffed Hollowhound. I don't think that it's quite good enough to make the cut of either of those decks. It might see some testing, but I think it won't see that much. Therefore, I've only given it a single solitary star. Next of our Who's Who of cards, Star Power. Mage Hunter, the other dual class Hunter has right now. 5 mana, deal 5 damage to a random enemy minion. Repeat this with 1 less damage, and it's an arcane spell. Just to be clear on this, by the way, it ticks down, so it does 5, then it does 4, then it'll do 3, then 2, then 1. I.e., as a base card, this will do 15 damage to enemy minions. Another key point, this is to minions, right? So, never goes face at 1 star. It's a really cool card. Back in my day, there was a card that did 15 damage to enemy minions. And that was Volcano in Shaman, which was 5 mana, deal 15 damage with random split, and it overloaded you for 2. This does 15 damage. It's 5 mana and it doesn't overload you. The problem with this versus that card is that this is less efficient, because that did 1 damage, machine gun them down. This does 5, then 4, then 3. If your 5 damage hits a 1 health minion, you lose 4 damage, or you won't get the full bang for your buck. So you kind of want a pretty big board for this to play this onto. The however to that, though, is that if you can get spell damage on this card, it scales out of control. If you put 1 spell damage on it, it does 6 damage. So instead of getting 15 damage total, you get 21 damage to enemy minions. If you get 2 through Aegwin, you can see where I'm going here. You're getting 28 damage instead, which is a much better scaling than Volcano was. So it has that going for it. Unfortunately, I think this will only see play as a control tool. And when you look at the list of mage cards for controlling the opposition, I just don't think this will see play in any of the decks. Would I see this over Blizzard? Probably not. Would I see you displacing this over Deathborn to generate Skellies? Probably not. They've then got a lot of single target freeze. They have things that make, your face immune like Solid Alibi. I just don't think there's room for this card in the mage deck, and I think that's where you're most likely to see it played. Also, big news! Do you remember Arcane Hunter, the archetype they tried to push with no support? Except for, I don't remember the card name. This one you can forgive me on, though. What was it called? Haldiron Brightwing. It's another arcane spell for Hunter, so you can throw that into your Arcane Hunter deck and lose with another card in it. It's pointless. It kind of, I guess I get why it can't go face, because 15 damage to the face for 5 mana. Pretty OP, honestly. But I just don't think Arcane Hunter is going to be viable. I don't think it'll make it viable. And I'm not even sure they would want this tool anyway, even if it was viable. So, nice. Alright, next on our list, we have the Costumed Singer. 3 stars. It's a 1-mana 2/1. And at the end of the turn, you draw a secret. So at the very least, it's 1-mana 2/1, draw a card. Which is okay. And it's not just a card, it's a card that you can kind of tutor for. Now, I will admit, you could also argue that it's not just 1-mana 2/1, draw a card, because it's a passive. So if you can keep this on the board for an additional turn, you'll draw 2 secrets. And that is really, really good then. However, most classes can do 1 damage, right? And therefore, it's just going to get pinged off the board on your next turn. There are some classes that can't do that, though, in which case Costume Singer might give you 2 secrets and you'll make them cry. Sorry, Shaman. I say sorry, Shaman. Shaman's got a lot of early game options, too, so... I basically think Costume Singer, unless you run into Paladin, you're probably not going to get 2 secrets out of it, and you'd start it first, of course. Now, you might be wondering why I'm saying 3 stars on this one. The Mage Secrets right now are pretty good. Mage Secret does see occasional play, and I think this card will just slot straight into it. I don't think it's going to make it a tier 1 deck. It might be at the low end of tier 2, though. So, for that reason alone, I'm going to give it a 3-star rating. And now this leads us kindly into Mage, where, honestly, I think you start to see some really interesting cards. And first and foremost, you're going to think I'm crazy, because no one has mentioned this card yet. 4-mana 4/4, and I've mentioned this card. I've not seen anyone on Twitter mention this card. 4-mana 4/4, Remixed Dispenser Bot. It's a mech. Gains an extra effect in your hand that changes each turn. I will show you the card effects it can go into before I show you the rating. So it can either be Chilling, which gives you 2 random frost spells. It can be a Merch Dispenser, which gives you 2 random mechs. It can be Money Dispensing, gives you 2 coins. Or it can give you 2 random Mage Secrets, the Mystery Dispenser. 3 stars. People are just ignoring this card. I think this is going to be the surprise. Well, there's 3 cards I put as surprise cards in the mini set. This is one of them, but I don't think you'll see play in a tier 1 deck. So, this is a 4-mana 4/4. Not fantastic. However, it has got the mech tag, so immediately Mech Mage is going to be like salivating over this, right? They love mech minions, they love mech minions that can generate cards. I mentioned before, the extra effects, you're going to be like, oh no, I'm sort of getting bad effects. Therefore, this card is not going to be good. It's not going to be the one I want. I honestly don't think this card has bad effects. I think all of them will have their uses. In Mech Mage as well. So let's go through them first. Chilling gives you 2 random frost spells. There are some low rolls on this, I will admit. Snap Freeze and Ice Barrier is not exactly what you're looking for. Especially Ice Barrier. You really don't want that. The Snap Freeze maybe you can do a little bit of stuff with, but they would be pretty low rolls. You could, however, get some really stacked cards, though, because the rest of the Frozen Frost Pool is so good. They have Frozen Touch. Would Mech Mage like Frozen Touch? Yeah, they probably would do, honestly, especially if you can generate more and more value. That's a pretty solid card. In fact, I've seen Mech Mage run the card. They have Cold Case, which is another fantastic card. I think Mech Mage, well, they wouldn't run it, but if they generate a card copy of it, they may be thankful for that. And then the other 2 options are Blizzard and Deathborn. There's definitely worlds where I can see Blizzard being played just to freeze the opposing board and let you have, like, that extra turn to attack through your opponent with all your mechs. Deathborn is probably not a great option for Mech Mage, but maybe again, I don't know, the opponent has taken the board over you. They have a lot of little plebs on the board. They've just been doing loads of trading. They're all weak. You Deathborn them and you just got a big bunch of Scaly Armies instead, which is going to keep plinking in the face. I think that's a reasonable tool, and you get 2 random ones. As long as you don't get, you know, Snap Freeze Ice Barrier, I think you're pretty golden. Merch Dispenser of Bot, I think this is one of the great ones for Mech Mage, though. It gives you 2 random mechs. Imagine playing this on turn 7, and it gives you Gorilla Bot. You've got a pre-mech loaded onto the board. You play the Gorilla Bot, that gives you even more mechs. And suddenly you've basically played like 7 mana. I can't remember what Gorilla Bot is. Is it a 3/4? It's like 7, 8 of stats, and drawn 3 cards. Because you'll have got mechs, and all the mechs in Mech Mage would be probably acceptable, at least stuff you'd consider putting into the deck. Money Dispenser gives you 2 coins. Okay, not as you think about this, but You can kind of say that this is a 2-mana 4/4. It's Millhouse Mana Storm with no downside. Okay, it has a downside. You have to play this on turn 4 to get the discount. Whereas Millhouse you could play on turn 2. But that's not a bad result, honestly. Again, maybe you have your Shark on the board. And you're like, oh my god, we play Money Dispenser. We hit 3 things, but I really want to play one more mech. You get 2 coins and that lets you play like a clicker bot or something. That could be humongous. Also, in terms of timing, the mage, God, I forgot his name. Let me just check it. The Colossal Minion from Mage, he comes out on turn 8, Gaia the Tectonic. If you get 2 coins from this on turn 4, you can play Gaia on turn 6. If you can discount it further with, I'm so bad with names. The 3-mana draw a card, discount your things. Is it Seafloor Gateway? You could potentially play your Colossal out on turn 5. That is really scary aggression. And it's not easy to get a hold of. Keep a hold of. Now, I would say probably the worst outcome from this, for a mech mage at least, is the secret package. Because the secret package is not that good. You do have objection and counterspell in there. Situationally, they can be good against certain decks. In fact, they can be real menaces against certain decks. Unfortunately, there are some pretty bad ones. You've, again, got Ice Barrier in there. You have... not Explosive Trap. What the hell is it called? Explosive Rune, sorry. Which, again, it's not the worst thing, but not the best thing. It's probably cards that you wouldn't want to play in Mech Mage anyway, so I think typically, if you're playing this in Mech Mage, get one of the other 3 options, and you're going to be pretty content. Ideally, get the mechs or the coins. Frost is not the worst. If you get secrets, so be it. Just roll the dice and hope you get good. I will say I don't think this will see play in any of the other mechs, which is why I've only given it a 3-star. And I'm not sure how much it's going to elevate Mech Mage's power ratings. I think it will slot into there. Mech Mage, it's often sitting around like tier 2, tier 3, right? I think it's a solid card. I think it's a solid, fun little card. I like that all the forms are pretty powerful. Okay. Next on the list, we have Reverberation. So Mage's other dual class is Warlock. This card is a 3-mana shadow spell. Summon a copy of a minion. Each one dies after taking damage. I'm putting big watch this space energy on this card as well. 1 star. I don't see where this card fits into right now. Okay? Mage, you could conceivably copy Aegwynn with it, which would let you do some big light shows or big Vexalis plays. I thought maybe this might see some play in Undead Warlock as well. You want to cheat out huge minions with your Slimes and Void Callers, right? You could copy a Void Caller, copy a Slime, and you want them to die, and this would let them die easier, so you'd get an advantage off the effect. The big thing that I think of off the top of my head from Warlock and Mage that you could copy is Dakan Drathe, which is a 7-mana undead, so you could play that and then this. That would do 6 times 2 lifesteal damage to the opponent's face. That might be all you need in that deck just to stay alive for an additional turn. It's not the end of the world either if they die, because they have the undead death pool to play around with, so it's not the end of the world if they get killed easily. The one problem I've got with this, and this is the major issue and why I've rated it 1 star, because in my head I was like, there's surely a combo here. There's got to be a combo. Currently in the pool, there is Cover Artist, the neutral card, which for 1 mana more copies a minion as a 3/3. And that sees no play in either of these decks, or in either of these archetypes, at least from what I can see. My brain, though, the creative juices were trying to flow. Surely there's a way, though, that you can copy a card like 5 times, including the original, and it leads to lethal in Warlock. Especially with, like, Darius cheating you mana. I just can't think of a sensible way, because currently the only one I can see is using Dakan, copying it 4 times, and that is 30 lifesteal to the face, i.e. lethal against a lot of decks. But I think the combo is not enough damage. It's too hard to enable as well, because you would need Thaddeus, and you need him on the even polarity, so you'd have to be on the board for a turn. Maybe people will try this as a meme, but I don't think it's there just yet. But there's definitely a world where if, like, a huge card comes out that you really want to copy, and you might want to copy it, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, Reverberations might see play. Okay, here is my surprise card number 2. Fiddlefire Imp. 3 mana, 3/2. Demon is an imp. Warlock Mage, Battlecry. Add a random Fire Mage and Fire Warlock spell to your hand. 4 stars. I think this, again, is being completely overlooked right now. And the only reason I'm giving this 4 stars is it's a very specific deck. And it is one of the imp decks, unsurprisingly. So, immediately when you see an imp, you're like, okay, Warlock will probably want this, right? They have imp support. And the important thing to say for those is, what are the spells you can get from the Mage pool? What are the spells you can get from the Warlock pool that are fire-related? For the Warlock pool, the 3 fire spells they have right now, and spoiler, they're not particularly great. Hellfire, which is a board clear, 3 mana to all. Arson Accusation, which is if your health is reduced, you target a minion, if your health is reduced, kill the minion. Okay. Pretty bad as well for Imp Warlock. And then Immolate, which is put everyone's hand on fire and after 3 turns, destroy cards that are still on fire. Also pretty bad for Imp Warlock. Now, what I will say, and this is where, again, I allude to, it's been good in an Imp deck. Hybrid Imp Warlock, which runs the curses as well, they would definitely consider running Hellfire in that deck. They would consider running Immolate in that deck. I've seen them run both. I definitely think Hellfire would be the better answer from these. And there's definitely a world where Arson Accusation is not the absolute worst thing for them. So they definitely could run this Imp and use it with some of their Imp support as well, for example, for drawing additional cards. Now you might want to say, what are the Mage pool then? Is the Mage pool good enough for either of these classes? So there are 7 fire spells in Mage right now. 2 of them are symmetric board clear, so Imp Warlock, just a pure Imp Warlock, will not want this, right? Volcamancy and Fire Sale. They could at least trade Fire Sale, but neither of the cards do good. They want to have their own board, they don't want to clear their own board. So immediately Imp Warlock out of the question. You probably don't want Fiddlefire Imp in that deck. However, for the hybrid deck with the curses, one of the big things that saw this deck drop off from being like top of tier 1 to probably even like tier 2-ish now, you do see it occasionally, but not as much as before, is that Bran dropped out of the core set. Therefore, you couldn't copy an additional curse. And it left you in a situation where you would leave your opponent on, like, 6 health or 10 health, and you just couldn't quite finish the job. A bit of extra damage, targeted damage, is all they need. And 4 of the spells of the 7 are targeted damage. Flame Geyser, Fireball, Fireland's Portal, and Pyroblast. This might just be good enough to finish off people. The final spell is Explosive Runes, which again is not the absolute worst for the hybrid deck, nor is, by the way, the Volcamancy or the Fire Sale, because you could use them to pop your Dark Vein copied Shadow spells, right? I honestly think it could just slot straight to that deck, and I think it's going to surprise some people. Is it going to be enough to elevate it back into the tippy tops of tier 1? I'm not sure, but I think it could take it back to tier 1, maybe. Just maybe. Maybe I'm being hopeful. This is my surprise package. My surprise card for this set. I think this will be a really good card, and people will overlook it. And I'm going to be running Hybrid Imp when the expansion drops tomorrow. Okay? Alright. Okay, now we get to the real good cards, rather than the meme ones that I was talking about. Dance Floor for Paladin. 2 mana location, give your minions rush, has 2 uses. 5 stars. Great card. It will slot straight into Pure Paladin. It will make Pure Paladin even more obnoxious, because people complain about that deck. It's like, oh, it's so hard to get the minions off, they have this stupid weapon. Sorry, bad news, it's going to be better. The big weakness of Paladin, and why this deck, or the idea of this deck, doesn't work at the highest like Masters tournament levels, is that once you've wrestled board control away from Paladin, that's it. They can't wrestle it back, right? They struggle. They're just playing the minions. They sit there for a turn. Your opponent clears them, plays into the minion or something, and you just snowball into death. However, Dance Floor allows you to wrestle it back. It gives your minions rush. And there are so many Divine Shield minions in the pool right now. You could conceivably quickly trade with one of these Divine Shield minions, a lot of which also have pretty good attack stats. Rush in, kill one of their minions, and you still have a body on the board. That's pretty powerful, right? The other thing you can do, because bear in mind, this isn't just give a minion rush, it's all your minions rush. You often get like a bunch of silver hands in your hand. You could throw all of those into the board and really efficiently trade with the dance floor to just like perfectly kill minions. The other thing you can do, surely you've played this deck, and like me, you get a big disco mall, and you like, I have to attack now because I want my minion to be able to attack with the stats now, because otherwise it's, you know, it's going to get the lights it burns treatment and just be evaporated from the board. I won't get to use it. But I'm going to miss out on value because I can't play minions this turn, because otherwise I'm going to hit a minion that has summoning sickness and they can't attack. No problem anymore, or at least less of a problem. It's a problem still if you wanted to go face, but if you wanted to hit a minion, less of a problem. Because now you can summon all those minions and dance floor and give rush to your giant minion. And maybe that'll be a big single target trade, which is, you know, good enough for you. So yeah, as I said, I think this deck, the Pure Paladin deck, is the bane of a lot of people's existences. I see a lot of people on Twitter moaning about it, and I think it's going to get harder with this mini set. Next on the list, Cold Feet. The first Paladin Frost spell ever, I believe. It is a 2-mana spell. Also dual classed with Death Knight. Enemy minions cost 5 more next turn. 1 star. I ummed and ahed about this. There are some people, again, I saw some photos on Twitter, people going, this card is obnoxious. Okay, it could be a little bit obnoxious in certain circumstances, but I just generally think it's a tech card. It's not going to see much play on the ladder. That's kind of where I'm sat at right now. It will depend how minion-centric the meta is. If there's a lot of big minions coming up on a swing turn and that's a problematic deck, you whack this into the board, slow them down for a turn. Like, for example, Druid approaching 7 or 8 mana, and you know Nubrican is coming, you just Cold Feet them, make them wait another turn. And the game's all about timings, right? Especially like the highest levels. Your deck has this power spike at this time, and then gets like weaker over time. If you're an aggressive deck, you power spike early. If you're a mid-range deck, you know, the middle range, you high range for control. That's like the only difference. So conceivably, Cold Feet, if that is the case, will see some play. However, I don't think the meta is in that place right now for this to be a problem. Therefore, it's going to be a dead card into a lot of decks, and therefore it just won't be played on the old ladder. Some people mention that you can find this with School Teacher because it's a 2-mana spell, and then you can play it multiple times. Like, you could potentially, I think the worry from that is that you could Cold Feet on like turn 3. You could, no, you'd have to do it on, it's too late, it doesn't matter, but you could Cold Feet School Teacher, play the minion, it Cold Feets again. You could play another copy of Cold Feet, you could play another School Teacher and Cold Feet again. You could just freeze the opponents like from playing minions for multiple turns. I think that's just a pipe dream though. It might happen to you one time. You'll get frustrated, forget about it, and move on, okay? I should, I guess, mention as well, it can also go into Death Knight. I can't think of a situation where Death Knight would want to run this either. It's more control orientated. The controlled Death Knight decks have better options than just slowing your opponent down. They have pretty good hard removal for blood. The Frost is just going to keep hitting you in the face anyway, so I don't think they're going to use the Cold Feet. I think this would be a bad spell to add to that deck. And the Unholy deck, do they care about it? Not really. They care more about big board clears. So I'm pretty certain it will see no play there either. Alright, next on the list is the other Death Knight Paladin card. It is Cool Ghoul. Name alone, 5 stars. Name alone. I love the name of Cool Ghoul. I love the art on this as well. It's such an aesthetically pleasing card. I just love that we can now play Dance Floor into Cool Ghoul, who just goes to the dance floor and he gets rushed and starts smacking your opponent. Anyway, I guess we'll talk about the card. It's 4 mana 3/1, Divine Shield and Reborn. That's a pretty sticky minion. It's the first Divine Shield as well for Death Knight, so there could be some pretty interesting things for this. Again, it's runeless, so it could go into, for example, Unholy Death Knight. And that's going to be hard to remove from the board, right? It's Reborn, it'll generate you another corpse. It has Divine Shield, so if you buff it, it's going to be really hard to remove. Without silence, that is. I've given this card 4 stars. Again, I think this might be I think this could be a surprise package either way. This card could actually see, like, a lot of play in Paladin. I don't think you're going to see much place in Death Knight. Play in Death Knight, by the way. Or you could see 0 play. There is no in between. I think, as I said, it will go into Unholy. It can generate corpses. It's hard to remove it. You can buff it and be pretty happy with it. The reason why I think Pure Paladin might try and slot this in as well is that it works so nicely with Dance Floor. You have your Divine Shield minion. The Dance Floor is up. He comes in, he swings with his Divine Shield, hits a minion, and he just gets stuck to the board, right? I mentioned you struggle to wrestle back board control versus as Paladin. Not with Cool Ghoul you don't, because the Divine Shield comes off, hopefully you kill a minion. Then Cool Ghoul gets killed. Oh, he comes back, he has Divine Shield again. You swing it again. Oh, I still have a Cool Ghoul. He's just going to stay on the board. If you get Cool Ghoul and the Disco Maul hits him, that's pretty spooky. Admittedly, it goes off on the Reborn, but... I mean, I guess it's like hitting any Divine Shield, but I just feel like that could be a pretty spooky turn. Now, I will say... The only thing that kind of stopped me from putting this into 5-star, and actually put me hesitant of putting it into 4-star even, I'm not sure it gets into Paladin, and I'm not sure it gets into Unholy Death Knight. I think it's on the cusp of both. The 4-star slot, the 4 mana slot, is pretty, you know, competitive in Paladin right now. Around there, you have Funkfin at 3. You have the Jitterbug, which is often played in these types of decks. Some people have tried to run, you know, stuff like Buffet as well, which is pretty powerful. Maybe people have tried both Jitterbug and the Cool Ghoul. I simply don't know. There are also variants where you don't run for the big payoff of the Countess, and maybe you try and run a minion-based Paladin deck where that might see play. For example, that with the old Funkfin and just start racing people down with Divine Shields. For those reasons, because I could see it being played in lots of places and those decks being really good. And I can see it in no places. I've given it 4 stars, but don't be surprised if it's 1 star. I'm going to cover my own back here. Next we have the weapon Horn of the Wind Lord. It should just be me. It's a 6 mana 3/4 Wind Fury. Whenever your hero attacks a minion, set its stats to 3/3. 4 stars. This weapon is crazy. I love this weapon. My big issue, just to say this immediately, is I don't see a deck that's currently out there right now where this just slots straight into it. At least one in the tier 1, and I don't think this will elevate those decks into like tier 1 or even tier 2 for that matter. But when the archetype comes in either Shaman, by the way, this is Paladin Shaman dual class card, that's the other Paladin dual class. When like a control deck becomes viable for either Paladin or probably more likely Shaman, this card will be a mainstay in it. It'll just slot straight into it. It's effectively 6 mana, take however much damage. Well, it's 6 damage, right? You turn them into 3/4, good point. Kill 2 minions. That's a solid control option. I don't think Pure Paladin will run this, which is part of the reason why I'm hesitant to give it a higher rating, because it messes up with the Disco Maul. I think they'll run Disco Maul and not the Horn of Windlord. Or you'll try to run Horn of Windlord and not the Disco Maul. But I doubt this is going to supersede that card. Where I think of the decks that are out there right now, this card could slot into Kangor's Big Paladin. This is the missing ingredient for that deck. What you want to do with that deck is control the board up until you get to, like, you know, up until you find Kangor, or you can start playing your 9 mana frontline cards. And this card just comes in at the perfect sweet spot to start clearing off some really troubling minions. I think it'll slot straight into that deck. Do I think that'll turn into a tier 1 deck? No. Is Kangor's in the tier 2 right now? I'm not sure if it is. It's at the very low end. I think it's tier 3. I think it's good for that deck, though. The other really nice option, and again, this is a deck that's not really been played right now, but in a previous expansion was, I could see Control Shaman running this. Control Shaman lost a lot of their big tools, or they had them nerfed. And therefore you don't see it roaming around too much. This weapon is a Wind Fury weapon with 3 attack that can clear off 2 minions. That's pretty powerful. They might just roll that card. The other thing I didn't even mention about this, because again, it's Wind Fury, there's a bit of flexibility in it. Sometimes you just need that extra 6 damage, and Horn of the Windlord is there just to do it for you. You can just hit the face with it instead. For those reasons, I'm down to give it less than 4 stars. Arguably by my metrics, which are kind of like, will this card see play in the meta decks right now? I probably should rate it low, because I don't think it's going to be in one of the big decks right now. But it's such a good card. I love this card. I'm honestly, I think the other deck, I kind of want to check out some warrior stuff. There's some mage things I wouldn't mind messing around with, some warlock things I wouldn't mind messing around with. I think Control Shaman is the other one. I kind of want to try and reforge the Control Shaman, right? I still don't think they have enough tools, though, sadly. Speaking of tools for Shaman, the final dual class card is Jukebox Totem. A card I kind of hate for thematic reasons. It's a 2-mana 0/4 Mech Totem. At the end of your turn, you summon a 1/1 Silverhand Recruit. Spoilers, by the way, I've given this 1 star. I hate the fact that Shaman now has access to Silverhand Recruits. It just feels a little bit weird. But, hey-ho. Again, this is a card on paper. You might look at this and go like, hang on a minute, this is a 2-mana 1/5, because you get the 0/4 plus the 1/1. Almost guaranteed, right? That's pretty good. That's 6 stats for 2 mana. The problem with this deck, the problem with this card, and I should also mention that this works with the Anchor Totem as well. The 1/1 will get the Anchor Totem buff, so like, things are looking good for this card. The problem is, the deck where you'd probably say this is going to slot into is Totem Shaman, right? That's the big Totem deck right now. The cards they run in 2 right now are Amalgam of the Deep, which I think is better than this card. Ancestral Knowledge, they need to draw cards, so that won't be replaced. Carving Chisel, which they use both to summon totems and to hit minions or hit the face for more aggression, doesn't replace that. And then finally, it's Flame Tongue, which is probably the one that it's most closely likely to swap out of, but I don't think it's as good as the Flame Tongue either, so I just don't think it's going to replace any of them. The other downside is the Silverhand Recruit that's summoned isn't a totem, so it doesn't buff Totemic Evidence, which requires totems, or Gigantatotem, the other big card from Totem Shaman. Therefore, you are generating minions, but you're generating minions that are not particularly useful for your end goal. If it generated a 1/1 totem, I think this card would 100% see some play, at least testing in Totem Shaman. And it probably would have seen some play over the Flame Tongue, even though that gives you a bit of extra damage. And then I'm not sure any other Shaman deck will run this. The Control Shaman deck that I was just talking about, I don't think I would put this in this deck. I don't think it's a great evolve target, right? The 1-mana 1/1, it's just too bleh. There are better things out there. So this means that the only other place it would see any home is in sort of Silverhand Recruit deck. The Silverhand Recruit support is not good enough right now. The deck doesn't see any play. And I don't think this card's going to make it see some play, so 1 star. It's going to be cracking in Arena, though. I think this card could be a bit of a menace. Alright, now we move on to Priest. And we have the Ambient Lightspawn. Way back when I mentioned that there is a bit more overheal support, this is the overheal support. 4-mana 3/4 Elemental. Has Finale and Overheal. Give a random friendly minion +2/+2. 2 stars. This will see some testing, but I think it's going to prove to be not quite there. If I'm wrong and the critical mass is there, this card will be guaranteed to be in that deck. If it's a good deck, this will become like a 4 or a 5-star card. For now, though, this is 2 stars. Or in my opinion, it is. The Dream World, where you have a minion on the board from turn 3, and like you Finale your Ambient Lightspawn to give it +2/+2. You overheal it with the Location or Idle Adjuration to use the hero power. You could treat this as a 4-mana 7/8, kind of. I know it's not quite the same as the package. That's insane. That is truly, truly insane. That would see you play in almost every single deck, right? It's even better if you could take it to 8 and play Partner of Crime into the Ambient to the Overheal. Then you're getting +8/+8 in stats instead. I just don't think you're often going to have the minion on the board to get the overheal off, nor will you have the mechanic to let you overheal on that. Because obviously the problem with the finale and the overheal is that if you finale, you're going to have 0 mana left, so it's going to be hard to overheal. Conversely, and you could also think of this in a different way, you could ignore the finale and just overheal it like 2 or 3 times instead. True, that might be where it ends up paying off in some sort of like mid-rangey priest deck. I just don't think it's quite there yet. And actually, I think one of the decks that I'm like lining this up against, because if I see it's like an aggro mid-rangey deck, if I look at aggro, Undead Priest is like the big comparison. Like, it's in the same class as it. And I just think Undead Priest is going to be too aggressive. They're going to have better control over the board than you are. They're going to see that you're the overheal deck. They're going to keep trading minions off. And eventually you're going to have to play this as a 4-mana 3/4 into them. And then you're just going to cry. You're going to have a big cry. Because it's not going to hit the random minion, so you don't get the boon from it. I don't think the deck right now is tier 1. I don't think it'll be tier 2. Soon, though. Soon. Overheal Priest lovers. I think soon. You're getting close to it. And I'd love to be proved wrong. I'd love for the Overheal Priest to be good enough. Because I think that could be a really fun direction for Priest. I used to hate Priest as well. This is my other thing. I've mentioned this, I think, in other videos. I really hated their playstyle, which was just drag the game out forever. They would like keep resummoning things, just big walls. You could never have a board. Okay, they still have the control elements right now, but I really like the idea of this minion-based control potentially. I think that could be a really fun mechanic. At least a little bit more, enjoyable in the old playing style. Next on the list, we have Plagiarizer. What a fantastic name. Bravo, by the way, for the naming of this expansion, or the card in the expansion at least. They have some really good names. I like Plagiarizer a lot. 3 mana 4/3 pirate. It's Rogue Priest, which we've already seen is their other dual class. Get a copy of the top card of your opponent's deck on a battle cry. This could surprise you, or it could not, I suppose. 1 star. I think this is not a bad card by any means. It gives you some information on the card your opponent is about to draw, so I like the design of it in that sense. The issue I have is on the rogue side of things. You're not guaranteed to get a class card, right? You don't discover, you just get the top card of the deck. It could be neutral, which is no good for the Burgle Rogue deck, right? From the priest side of things, I don't think it's the best option for discovering cards from your opponent. I think there are just better things out there. Namely, I think it's better to have the Psychic Conjurer. I think it's better to have Identity Theft. I think it's better to have the... what's it called now? Death Rattle. Copy a card from your opponent's deck. Mind Eater. Mind Eater, that's the card I was looking for. I think it's just better to have those instead of this one. I just don't think there's going to be room for you to run this. Maybe there will be a hard Thief Priest deck and they'll run the Plagiarizer, but I don't think it's going to be as good as the ones out there, like the Control Priests out there, the mid-rangey Priests out there. I just don't think it's going to supersede them. I should mention as well that it is a pirate, so there is a pirate rogue archetype, but I don't think this will be aggressive enough to be ran in that deck either. They really want pirates that you can cheat out, or pirates that give your weapon more attack. This is like a pirate that draws a card, but it's a card that might not be good in your deck, so I don't think they will play it. I would have liked this card, and maybe they might buff it in the future. I'd love it to be discovered instead from the top 3 cards, so you could see the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. You could then pick a card that isn't a class, that is a class card, which would be good for the rogue. I think if you did that, then 100% this card would see play. In fact, I think it would see play in both priest and rogue. As it is, though, I don't think it sees play in either of them. Next on the list, it is Deafen. This is a real weird one of my old ratings again. It's a 1 mana shadow spell. Silence a minion combo, also deal 2 damage to it. Rogue Priest. I've given this 3 stars, but I'm not sure it's going to go into any single deck. It's Earthshock for Rogue and Priest, right? Silence a minion, do damage to it. Admittedly, you have to combo it, but that's not too bad for Rogue. A bit more of a problem for Priest, I would say. Many patches. And I'm going to talk about the deck where this could have seen some play into. Many patches. the Hearthstone team had been beating Miracle Rogue with a stick because it was too strong, it was obnoxious, especially the Draka variants where you want to generate a big old weapon. The big counter that was big minion with Taunt. This card, as a 1-mana silence, would have seen play, I'm certain, in Rogue because of that. To silence a Taunt minion to let you push damage to the face. Even as the big old Cemetery ghouls, I still think this might have seen play in the Miracle Rogue deck. But I think the deck has seen so many nerfs right now that I don't think it's good enough to make the deck, you know, like top tier, but it will see some testing in that deck. Like, bearing in mind, even like without the Draka variant, one of the big counters that's at like the top competitive play in like the Master Stores, people were running like Naga Priest decks with Boon of the Ascendant to generate a huge Taunt minion, and that was just too much for the deck. They couldn't counter it. This would have been so good into that deck. However, it was tier 1 back then, so I'm kind of glad they didn't release it then. They might have had to wait even for that to, like, some of this stuff to rotate out or be nerfed before they could add this card to the standard. That being said, I think Miracle Concoction will try this card out, and I could see it being okay in that archetype. On the priest side of things, I don't think any priest deck will start with this. It's pretty good at breaking eggs if you're like running into a Death Knight or even the Undead Mirror. You silence the 0-2 foul egg. You kill it immediately, they get no benefit from it, right? You make them cry. Maybe you'll see some play, but I don't think it will do. I don't think it's quite going to make the cut in those decks. I don't think it's going to be in the control decks because it's going to be awkward for them to enable the combo side of things. And they have better silence tools out there. Part of the reason why I've given this 3 stars, though, and again, it's a little bit cheaty because, what was the card I was looking at earlier? Sorry, let me just scroll up a second. It's like Tough Crowd, which I gave 3 stars to, but I don't know if it's going to see any play in any deck. It's one of those cards that I think is going to be discovered a lot and become a bit of a menace from that. And there's one great way to discover this, and it's because it's a shadow spell. It's going to be really good in Sister Svalna's Visions of Darkness. There's often in the Visions of Darkness, you end up drawing a shadow card that is no good. Like, it's too expensive, it's hard to play, it's not good at that moment. A combo 1-mana card that just silences a minion and does 2 damage to it might actually just be good enough, for the most part, to stop you filling your hand with cards that are just too specific, you don't ever use them. I think this is going to be a great take, and I think in Svalna Priest, you might see this taken a lot. I just don't think it'll be in the base deck. It'll also mean that the Svalna Priest, the Control Priest, is going to be the king of silence. They're just going to be silencing for days, because they will always have access to this card. Admittedly, the Shadow Pool is big enough that you won't be guaranteed to get this, but you'll get it enough that I kind of gave it a 3 on that merit. I think it's more likely at 2 it'll see some testing. I bumped up to a 3 because I think you'll discover it and use it more often. It's also going to be pretty good for the old School Teacher as well. The 1-mana spell, School Teacher, an emergency silence, and an emergency do 2 damage to a minion. Solid. Very solid. Okay, we did both Fanboy and Funnel Cake before. Now we go to the Rogue cards. And immediately have the One-Hit Wonder. 2-mana 2-1. Rush, combo, gain Poisonous. That's right, it's 2 mana, Rush Poisonous, 2 mana kill a guy. I've given this 4 stars. It's also an undead, by the way, which is pretty good in its own right, having a tribe. But I have to admit, I'm not 100% certain what deck is going to run it yet. I just can't see 2 mana kill a guy being that bad, right? Because the light it burns in Priest is 1 mana, potentially kill a guy. This has none of the bells and whistles attached to that. It is literally just kill a guy. The combo in Rogue is going to be easy enough to set off, hopefully. Famous last words. Maybe this will elevate combo combo Rogue into a place that it'll see play, because I think that is probably the best place for it. Somewhere that you can... Just some place that you could... keep clearing off like single minions, getting some extra value, and maybe you work it that way. But I think the problem with like the Value Rogue is the same problem you're always going to have with Value Rogue and any iteration of it. They can't deal with big boards, right? They have no form of board clear. So, One Hit Wonder might be a 4-star card that will see no play because it's not good enough for Rogue. Nevertheless, if Miracle Rogue becomes good, we did mention Deafen before. I said Deafen could see play in Miracle Rogue because it can silence a taunt. One Hit Wonder could see play in that deck for the same reason. It could just kill a taunt minion instead. So, for those reasons, because I think it will be tested in Miracle Rogue, I think some people will test it with Value Rogue, namely me. And the card is just, it's good. Surely it's good, right? Right? surely 2-mana killer guy is good enough. I've given it 4 stars, but don't be surprised if it sees no play. Okay, next on the list, because we've done Rhythm Dancer Risa, we've done Tough Crowd, we've done Plagiarizer, we've done Deafen. We go to Shaman, the remixed Totem Carver, a 3-mana 3/2, gets an extra effect in your hand that changes each turn. Spoilers, by the way, I'll just show off the cards, but it basically gives you one of the special totems. You either get Battlecry Summon a Flame Tongue, the Mana Tide, the Jukebox, or the Stereo Totem. They are its effects. 1 star. I think this will see no play again. The argument again is this is probably, or the argument, the place this is most likely to see play is Totem Shaman, right? Each of the special totems are around 2.5 mana in cost. The card itself is a 3-mana 3/2. 3/2s normally would say it's a 2-mana. You're saving about 1.5 mana-ish. Assuming, you know, it is a 2-mana 2/3 is your base. On paper, this seems good, but there's some real low rolls for this. And I mentioned it before. These cards that change effects, you really need all 4 effects to be stellar. And I just don't think they are. Because when you get Flame Tongue from Remixed Totem Carver, the Remixed Totem Carver will always be next to the Flame Tongue. So you're going to neuter half the Flame Tongue's effect, which is like immediate give me attack. My minions are going to, you know, my readied minions are going to attack now. You'll only get 1/2 of it. So that, I think that's pretty unfortunate. Stereo Totem doesn't see play in Totem Shaman anyway, so I'm just going to discredit it immediately. Jukebox Totem I talked about, I don't think it will see play in Totem Shaman. But it's probably not the worst option. And I think the one you will want to get is Mana Tide Totem for a little bit of extra draw. That could be good enough. However, this isn't a totem again. I don't think it's going to see play in Totem Shaman. Because the 3 of the 4 totems, or at least 2 of the 4, see absolutely 0 play. I don't think Mana Tide sees much play in Totem Shaman either, actually, because you use Ancestral Knowledge instead. So even that is like a potential low roll. So the one you want to get is not as good as it would be if you just had it in the deck. Catch my drift? So I think the place where this would see the most play is in an Evolved Shaman deck, where you evolve the 3-mana 3/2 into a 4-mana do something else. However, I don't think this card is going to be good enough for that, right? I don't think it's cheaty enough in the old Evolve. So for those reasons, I think it's going to be a 1-star card. Okay. For some reason, when I did my notes, I ignored Backstage Bouncer and Jam Session, but I'll talk about them later when I get to the Warrior cards. So let me just skip over them for now and go to what I think was meant to be one of the centerpieces of this mini set. Fanatem, Lord of the Opera, 30 mana, 15/15. Yeah, you heard me, 30 mana. Has Taunt Lifesteal. The card's cost is equal to the amount of cards in your deck. This card's terrible. Reluctantly, I'm going to give it 2 stars. I actually think it's 1 star, though. That's my very, very gut feeling is it's 1 star, but people will test this enough that I've given it 2 stars. And this honestly leads me to a question. So for anyone who is still watching at this point, God love you. First and foremost. So this card, obviously, the idea of this is to get to a very low amount of cards in your deck, ideally like, 1 to like 0 even, and you just play out an incredibly cheated 15/15 Taunt Lifesteal. I see this card though, instead of being like a 1-mana 15/15 as, oh, this is going to get lighted burned, isn't it? Just immediately eliminated. I think that's just it's folly, right? It's not a fast card. It's slow. It just sits on the board. You don't have a death rattle even. Taunt Lifesteal, 15/15. you're just going to get it removed immediately. There's so much removal in the game. Like, I was just talking about the rogue card that I'm not even sure we'll see play, but I can't see it not doing it. You could get one-hit wondered and silence the opera. Thanatel, Lord of the Opera. I've been working on this piece for many years, decades even. And a one-hit wonder comes along and, you know, gives you Upa Gangnam Style and kills the card. I just don't think it's gonna be good, right? My question, what I was alluding to before, is would you pay for this card at 10 mana? If it was 10 mana, 15/15 taunt lifesteal. Because I don't think you would do. Would you pay for this at 8? I don't think you would do either. I don't think the card, I think at 8 mana, 15/15 taunt lifesteal is good enough to see playing constructed standard. Now, the one thing I'm damned to say this, I think it will see play in, at least, this card I think would have seen play if you'd given it either a Death Rattle effect, or if you'd given it Rush, so you could at least get the 15 lifesteal from it immediately. Okay, the card might see some play then. I really think it should have Rush, honestly. But there's one reason, and one reason alone, it won't get Rush ever, and why I think this card will see play, and therefore I've given it a 2 rating. There is one way that's really good to remove all the cards in your deck. That's right, it's the Jailer. I think the intention here and why they've been so, like, coy on this card is the Jailer shreds your entire deck, and this will become a 0 mana 15/15. That's pretty spooky, okay? I'll give you that. 0 mana 15/15 taunt lifesteal. That is immune as well, so the taunt's actually irrelevant. That's pretty spooky. However, and this is why I don't think they could give it Rush, because then you could rush into a minion and just get 15 lifesteal immediately, and that kind of counters the big downside of the Jailer, which is your minion's going to immune, therefore you can't taunt your face anymore, so you're always liable to your face being raced down instead. Phantom would have got around that with Rush, so they can't give it Rush, sadly, because of the Jailer. I still don't think this is going to be good enough, though, to see play with the Jailer, because the weakness, as I said, it's getting raced down. The 15 lifesteal, oh, that could be really nice. However, if you set up the combo with Jailer plus Mal'Ganis, which is like the dream, then your face is immune. You're immune to damage, so why do you care about lifesteal? Which then leads me to the next situation. The only reason you would run Phantom in that deck, and why I think people will run it in that deck, including possibly me, is that if you lose either Mal'Ganis, or your Jailer Mal'Ganis gets killed, you will have Phantom as the backup for this. In theory, if you can get one attack off with the Phantom each turn and survive through that first turn, the 15 lifesteal is probably enough to see you through with the Jailer that you won't get rushed down anymore. But if you're, like, worried about board clears, Phantom could still get board cleared, like, the second turn around. He may never attack. For those reasons, I think he's actually a 1-star that will get a 2-star rating, just because he'll see play in this deck. The deck is, at the very least, tier 2. I say at the very least, it's definitely like tier 2, possibly tier 3, but I think it's more in the realms of tier 2. It will see play in it, 2 stars, sure. But I think people will quickly realise that it's not actually that good. So again, unfortunate, another legendary that I think is not superb. Alright, here come the warrior cards now. Remix Tuning Fork, a 2-mana 2/2 weapon, has extra effects in your hands. Those effects being the backup Tuning Fork, discover a taunt minion, the curved one, also damages minions adjacent to the one your hero attacks, the reinforced that gives you 5 armor, or the sharpened Tuning Fork that gives you 2 attack. These are all battle cries with the exception of, the damaging minion, which is not a battle cry, it's a passive. This is an interesting little weapon. 2 stars. I don't know if this is gonna see play. It's a really solid low-cost weapon. It works really nicely with the new Abyssal Bassist as well. Nice little synergy there. I don't know if it's going to be good enough, though. I think all the effects are okay. I think gaining 5 armor is the weakest of those, though. You'd probably want to avoid that if you can. I could see a Menagerie deck maybe trying to run this weapon to enable your Abyssal Bassist to make it even better, and hoping that you either discover a Taunt minion, which could be another Tribed minion, or getting the the 2/2 the minions adjacent to it, so you can try and, control the board a little bit as your menagerie deck. I could see those being decent. And actually, a 2-mana 4/2 weapon, that's pretty solid as well for just doing that same job, just clearing minions off your opponent's board. My only problem with that, though, is that Imbued Axe at 3 cost doesn't see playing Menagerie Warrior. Or at least the focused Menagerie deck, he does see playing the Enraged deck. Therefore, I don't think reducing the cost by 1 is going to make it run instead, but maybe that is the cutting point, the breaking point. Maybe this is just good enough to see Remix tried in the Menagerie deck. For that reason, I think I'm going to give it 2 stars. I think it'll be testing in Menagerie, and I think Menagerie Warrior is getting some good cards. Therefore, 2 stars. Okay, next on the old list, Backstage Bouncer. 4-mana 4/2 is the Shaman Warrior card. It's a beast. It's got Taunt. It has Battlecry. Transform a friendly minion into a copy of this. 3 stars. But again, it's kind of a little bit iffy. This could be another 2-star card. I really like the theme of this card, though. It slots straight into Menagerie Warrior again. Menagerie Warrior, they run a few beasts already, but one of them is Nelly. And Nelly's got a really low win percentage associated with it. I think Nelly's a little bit too late for your Menagerie Warrior. I think you want it to be more aggressive. So this fits pretty nicely into that theme. The other beast, they run a party animal, which is, I guess, fine. You could get some unfortunate situations of party animal plus this and you miss out on a buff from the party animal. Like if you had, a copy of each in your hand when you played the party animal as well. Okay, sure, you could make a bad route there. Click Clocker is also in that deck, which is a mech beast. So I can definitely see a world where they're too saturated on beasts to play this Backstage Bouncer. But just imagine the world where you trade like your Rolling Stone, or your Click Clocker is still on the board, it's lost its Divine Shield, it's still a 1/1 or something, and you play this big frog, and he turns into a 4/5, and you effectively get like 3/4 in stats or something like that. Or, as I said, you trade the minion and give it like plus, or you turn into a 4/5, whatever that ends up being for stats. It's so much potential value. I think, unfortunately, though, that even though you've given Menagerie a lot of support, I don't think it's going to be a tier 1 deck. I think it's going to be a tier 2 deck. I'm not sure this will see play into it. I've kind of boldly said 3 stars. It's probably a 2-star card. It may even be 1 star in the end. When everything settles down, this might not be good enough. I don't think this is good enough for the Enraged deck either, because you don't want to change your Enraged minions that are getting buffed by your Enraged buffer cards into this Bouncer. So it really is that deck or nothing, I think. The final Warrior card, Jam Session. 2-mana Fire Spell. That's important. Give a friendly minion +3/+3. Deal 1 damage to all other minions. Overload 1. That's right, you can overload your Warrior now. This is my other shot card of the expansion that I think will actually see play in the tier 1 deck. 5 stars. There is a deck right now, I mentioned this before, it's rising through the rankings, it's Enrage Warrior. One of the reasons the Enrage Warrior deck list is a little bit problematic right now and why it fell off so harshly from the previous expansion is they lost a lot of ways for them to do 1 damage to their minions. So much so that they were putting like Pyromancer in the deck to enable this Enrage Warrior deck. This is so nice. 1 damage to all minions, 3/3 to a minion. For 2 mana? Oh, Chef's Kiss, so nice. I should mention, if you've not seen this Enrage deck, they run the Fire Warrior support cards, including, God, my names again. I noted this down and I can't find it. It's the Phoenix guy, Thoradin? Something like that? I'm finding him. Where are you? Is he 5 mana? I actually don't remember. I don't have, oh no, I'm dumb. I don't have the cards. I'm looking through my deck list. Yeah, you don't have it, buddy. I might have it though, upcoming. Thoribalor, or how you meant to actually say it. So this is the legendary minion that's Rush Death Rattle. It goes dormant. After you cast a fire spell, you revive it. They run a lot of fire spells to keep that minion, always on the board. It can rush into things to get, like, hurt as well, to buff it then with the old buff weapon thing. I'm just losing my mind right now. Just forgive me. The Imbued Axe, right? So this just slots perfectly into that deck. That deck is tempo-based. They want their stats early, so the Overload is completely fine for it. They want the 3/3 stats now. They want the Enrage Enabler right now. The other really nice thing about this card is because it's 3 mana, it can be School Teachered. And the deck, the Enrage deck, often runs like a copy of School Teacher at least. They might want to run 2 now, because if you find this card and you get 4 copies of it, you could do some pretty disgusting things. Again, whether or not this deck becomes truly tier 1 depends on the future enabling of the Enrage support. But even right now, I think this deck could just climb into the lower ends of it, so I've given it 5 stars. It might be the top end of tier 2, though, I have to admit. But hey, it'd be pretty funny after everyone was complaining about how weak Warrior is, if in the future that they have to nerf Warrior. Because I think they're getting towards that critical mass right now. Okay, we're approaching the end now. The final ones are the neutral cards. We have, and I think this was meant to be the big card of the expansion, this is the centerpiece. Elite Tauren Champion, 5 mana 5/5 finale, start a rock duel. Players must spend all of their mana each turn or else they take 8 or more damage. As soon as this was announced, everyone's like, what the hell does this card mean? What do you mean 8 or more damage? How does the or more happen? And then they showed a screenshot of this. This is what actually happens. You get a Molten Pick of Rock. At the end of your turn, explode for 8 damage. If you spend all of your mana, you give that to the opponent with +2 damage. Honestly, this is the hardest card to rate this expansion. I've put question mark 1 star in my notes. Sorry, Legendaries, I'm going to keep beating you back down. I think this is a meme. I'm pretty certain it's a meme. I can't think of a reason why this is not a meme. And yet, I'm worried that it's the best card in the set. So, my theory is that you would want to run this with cards that have, like, spend all your mana to do X. So you can guarantee finale all your mana every single turn so you don't explode. Because this thing passes between you, and you don't want to get exploded for, like 9 damage or 11 damage or so on and so forth. You want this to hit your opponent. But it's so hard to know that your opponent is going to play around this or not. The problem with that idea of, spending all your mana, I had a look in the old standard collection right now. There is only one card that has an effect that says spend all of your mana. And it's Lost Exarch, which means you would have to trigger the Death Rattle yourself. But, I don't know, maybe people in Wild are going to be playing Bomb Tennis? I don't know. I don't see this being played in Standard. I don't think there's a way I can think of right now of cheating this. Like, to guarantee your opponent explodes. If you could, then it would see play, especially if you could, you could choose when it explodes. I think it's too risky. I get the idea of it as well, that even if your opponent, plays around this and does finale to prevent them from taking 8 damage, it will then come back to you, sorry, it's 10. I said 9 before I was wrong, so it was 10, 12, 14 is what you would be taking. You wouldn't play Elite Tauren Champion unless you knew you could play 6 mana on the next turn, which would pass this back. Then your opponent, no, you'd be on 7, so you'd need to know 7. Oh my god, my brain's melting. Then they'd have 8. And if your opponent played the 8 mana of cards, and I think this is where you're assuming they're going to get hit for 12, it's going back to you. So you need to have in your hand when you play the Elite Tauren Champion a way to spend 7 mana, then a way to spend 9 mana, and then it's 10 from there onwards. Maybe Control Warrior can do that, but I don't think there's many other decks that can cope. Maybe Control Priest can do it as well because of the visions, right? It's a really good way to just keep guaranteeing you have cards, because eventually you're going to run out of cards, right? And the pick will explode. But I'm not sure that deck wants the Molten Pick of Rock in it. Because the idea of that deck is just you survive until your opponent has no more cards. They don't really care to do 8 damage to the... Well, probably more than 8 damage to the face. It's a meme. It has to be a meme, right? What is not a meme, and I think this is the best legendary of this expansion. 5 mana 5/5, Magatha, Bane of Music. Battlecry, draw 5 cards. Give any spells drawn to your opponent. 5 mana, 5/5, draw 5. And it's all the 5s and giving it 5 stars. This card is insane, surely, right? Giving your opponent spells, yeah, okay, that's going to be bad. But obviously you're going to tailor your deck to be more minion-based. I'm not even saying that you have to play your entire deck minion-based, but let's say you're playing Mech Mage, since we've mentioned this a lot before. They often only run like a spell, or 2 copies of a spell, and that's C4 Gateway. If you draw 5 cards and give your opponent C4 Gateway, who cares? They can't use that card. If you're playing an Unholy Death Knight, for example, or an Undead Priest, sure, they run a few more spells, but they're very specific for undead minions. Again, your opponent might not be able to use those spells, because you put them into your deck for that reason. So I can see this being played in any aggressive minion-based deck for a refill. And because I think this could be played into Undead Priest, and I think it could be played into maybe Unholy Death Knight, but that might be the weaker of these, but especially Undead Priest, which is tier 1 right now. I think this will keep it tier 1, I think it will elevate it further. I think this is a really, really strong legendary. Next, we should have really finished it on that card, because it'd be finishing with a bang, where I'm going to finish with a whimper instead. Grim Totem Buzzkill. 4 mana 5/4 Battlecry. Discard a weapon to draw 3 cards. It's not a totem, therefore I want to give it 1 star, but no. I'm going to give it 2 stars, because I think people will test with this card before deciding it's not good enough. Okay, just down to basics. Down to basics. 4 mana 5/4 is a pretty good stat line, right, for 4 mana. You have to discard a weapon to draw 3 cards, so effectively, if you include the discards as a minus to the draw, it's 4 mana 5/4, gain 2 cards. That's okay, right? More than okay, and it's neutral, so you could put it into classes that might struggle with draw engines, but have access to weapons. And Fortune Flame, which is the card that I kind of see this as the most comparable to, did see some play in Warrior, which was where you destroyed your weapon and you gave cards equal to the attack of your weapon. However, the problem with that is Fortune Flames only gave you more than 2 cards, and you got to attack with the weapon first, whereas this one you discard the weapon. You don't get the use of it. I think people will test it out as a draw engine, but I think it's going to ultimately see no play. I would err towards, there's some cards where I say this is going to be a 2-star because people will try it and it won't work. I think this is a card that is 2 stars, but really it's like a 1.25 and I've rounded it up. People will test it and it will turn out to be the decks that had access to weapons had a good enough draw engines without this card. And it's not worth it to need a weapon in your hand, it's too situational, so it won't see any play. Okay? Speaker Stomper. 4 mana 4/4, tradable minion. Battlecry, your enemy spells cost 2 more next turn. Alright, 1 star by the way. Immediately you can compare this to a card that's in standard. Cult Neophyte, that's 2 mana 3/2, and your opponent's spells cost 1 more next turn. This card is twice the cost, gives twice the effect, but is not twice the stats, it's actually understated compared to it. In some very high level play, Cult Neophyte does see a little bit of play as a tech card, mainly against, though I believe it was Miracle Rogue, to stop them doing these insane combos when the graveyard come up, because you would know they were going to try and do the combo, because the graveyard would be up, right? I don't see a world where Speaker Stomper is going to fill that void. And it's not even a void, because you still have Cult Neophyte. I just don't think you'll play that over Cult Neophyte. I don't think the 2 more is going to be important enough. Now, you might point out, because this is clearly a tech card, Rustrot Viper was a tech card, and because it had a tradable to it, which was a weapon destroyer, that saw play. So maybe this will see play. Maybe the tradable is good enough for it. Maybe this is the future of tech cards. They gave them tradable so that you can keep sending it back to the deck. Fine, you're spending a mana, but you don't have this dead card, because 4 mana 4/4, that's not even great in Arena anymore. I think the problem with that is, though, that Rustrot Viper was okay to play as the 3 mana 3/4. It was well statted. This is understated. And at the time, the weapon synergy was really strong. Like, playing certain weapons were just match winning, right? I don't think there's a situation right now where there is a turn where you're expecting spells to go off that you have to interrupt it or you're going to die. And if there is, I don't know what you'd be playing the turn afterwards. I just think it's too messy. I think it's too situational. I don't think it's going to be good enough. I think it'll see no play. So 1 star. And finally, Remixed Musician. Rush, 3 mana, 3/3. Gains a new effect while it's in your hand. And those effects alter between Divine Shield, Poisonous, Lifesteal, and Wind Fury. What an underwhelming end. 1 star. I called this pack fill in my notes again. I don't think it's terrible, this card, actually. There's definitely situations where 3 mana, 3/3 Rush Poisonous is going to be good enough. There's certainly situations where Rush Wind Fury is going to be really good. Rush Divine Shield, really good. And maybe even Rush Lifesteal. The problem is that those situations will never align with the card's text at that time, right? Because you're going to want Rush Wind Fury if there's like a bunch of like little beams on the board or something, so you can trade out 2 beams and still have a minion on the board. You want Rush Poisonous when there's 1 big minion instead. It's just never going to align. Like, the stars won't align. It has no tribe either, so there's not a lot of great ways to buff it. I think it will see basically 0 play. Might be a really good arena card. Anyway, that is going to do it for the mini set. I hope people, check it out. I hope people enjoy it. I honestly think people, again, I accept the legendaries, I think are a little bit underwhelming this expansion. But I think there's enough stuff in here to really get your teeth into. And I think it's going to improve some decks that are not tier 1, but were around like tier 2, tier 3 region. And really that's all you want from the expansion, right? To mix and match things a little bit, like have certain strong decks be strong, then eventually those weaken off a little bit and another deck rises. You want that kind of like, you want that play style, honestly. And I hope that they're leaning towards that. Anyway, thanks for everyone who watched and enjoy the expansion. Goodbye.